What a day. Too much news for just 1 hour, but we'll get through it together. We've gathered the very best for you tonight. A huge breakthrough on the president's tax plan in the Senate. I talked to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell about what kind of break you might get, at least you hope you're going to get. And we get his take on that wild Senate race in Alabama and what might happen to Roy Moore if he actually gets elected. I also sit down with Marco Rubio on the possible existence, get this, of a sexual harassment slush fund in the Senate. Stay tuned for that. And Herman Cain is here as well. We haven't seen him in a while. We're going to ask him if these sexual assault accusations are now just going too far. And I will also deliver a very important message to all of you Melania haters out there in the media. And that will be at the end of the hour. You do not want to miss it. But first, we start with a question that's on the minds of many Americans.
Well, we'll fly around the world to a secret destination. Where in the world is Matt Lauer?
Well, I guess I know where he was all those trips. Well, we know tonight that we can report, of course, Matt Lauer is no longer the anchor over at the Today Show, fired overnight. And reportedly, with no warning, Lauer is the second morning network anchor to fall in just a week. They had one of the biggest runs on television ever, most profitable franchise in television history. Then NBC said the firing followed recent accusations from one co-worker, but Variety magazine, they did their own 2-month investigation published today and found evidence of a lot more wider and abusive conduct. Hours after that, the New York Times reported 2 more claims. And Lauer's co-workers, Savannah Guthrie, Hoda Kotb, learned of the news of his firing just before they reported it at the top of the Today Show. That's quite an opening. And they all and their colleagues at 30 Rock were visibly shaken by this news.
All we can say is that we are heartbroken. I'm heartbroken for Matt. He is my dear, dear friend and my partner, and he is beloved by many, many people here. How do you reconcile your love for someone with the revelation that they have behaved badly?
I've known Matt for 15 years. It's hard to reconcile what we are hearing with the man who we know, who walks in this building every single day.
I texted him this morning and said, I adore you. And no person is perfect in this world. Nobody is.
And my thoughts, of course, are with Matt. He's been a friend. He's been a mentor. He's been a guy you could watch, a guy who led by his example on the set.
I am stunned by this. I've known Matt for 25 years. I consider him to be a friend. Willie was apt in his description of Matt.
Then again, maybe there were some warning signs just below the radar. Back in 2012, Lauer's longtime co-host Katie Couric said something in an interview that didn't get much notice at the time, but maybe it should have.
The Today Show with Matt Lauer for 15 years. What is Matt's most annoying habit?
He pinches me on the ass a lot.
Lovely. She had kind of a sour face there. Katie wasn't kidding. And that's kind of genuine disgust. And it makes you wonder how NBC supposedly missed this for all these years. Also getting a close second look is a Today Show promo that seemed to openly hint at Lauer's reputation for inappropriate behavior with ladies, and possibly a habit of, I don't know, walking around without his pants.
Drink it in, ladies.
Again, Matt? Really?
It's the 3rd time this week. Did your mommy give you those?
Stop it. You're making me lactate.
Get it while it lasts.
Again? Well, I mean, NBC claims none of their current leadership knew about Lauer's past, but it seems kind of hard to believe now. To help us make sense of all of this, these shockwaves in the media world, we'll bring in Fox News media analyst Howie Kurtz. One thing that was interesting today, Joe Flint tweeted the following. He said, NBC News doubles down. We can unequivocally say prior to Monday night, current NBC News management was never made aware of any complaints about Lauer's conduct, said the network. Current NBC management. Jeff Zucker over at CNN was the executive producer of the Today Show for many years, very successful. And he had a very terse statement through a spokesperson today, Howie, that there was never a complaint filed against him during his time there. That's it.
Well, the complaint part might be true, but it certainly raises a lot of questions about who in NBC management at various times knew about this. And NBC, Laura, tried to seize the moral high ground by saying, well, we fired Matt Lauer as soon as we got this complaint, 36 hours. And it's true, the NBC took swift action. But clearly this was a preemptive move before the Variety piece comes out with allegations about him giving a sex toy to a coworker, exposing himself to another worker.
There's a photo, apparently, that they have now.
Right. I mean, this is pretty graphic stuff. And a New York Times piece talks about a woman who said she did have sex in 2001, Matt Lauer, that she felt pressured to save her job. So NBC tried to control the narrative by not putting out much detail and getting out ahead of these reports that shows that these allegations have been out there for some time.
Now, just going back to Jeff Zucker, though, I mean, it reminds me kind of what we were hearing about Harvey Weinstein, that, oh, I'm shocked. I can't believe that Harvey Weinstein. And then you heard, I mean, I had heard about Harvey Weinstein back in 1997. I was on the Today Show a bunch of times. I always liked Matt Lauer. He seemed fine to me. He's kind of a liberal guy, but he was nothing but nice to me. So I had very minimal interaction with him. But from the Katie Couric comment to that odd promo, there were a couple of other things that have popped up on tape. It's a little strange for a network that prides itself on being so pro-women and we're all for girl power, and it's a little odd. And Jeff Zucker, he doesn't come out on camera today. This is one of his old friends, old buddies. Nothing.
You have to cringe looking at some of these now skits and what Katie Couric said and all of that. But you know what happened is the environment has changed. So whereas it might have been easy for NBC and other networks, Laura, other networks have had these problems.
Yeah, we have.
Yes,
yeah.
But to look the other way, to not take it seriously, to turn a blind eye to what some of the women who were complaining in the era of Harvey Weinstein and all the politicians now, Al Franken and Roy Moore, John Conyers being accused.
Overwhelmingly Democrat.
Right. So now you can't get away with it. So CBS dumps Charlie Rose right away, NBC dumps Matt Lauer right away. But there are a lot of unanswered questions here about who knew what, and was NBC allowing this to go on?
They're not revealing the name of the young woman who said in 2014 he approached her
at the Olympics.
Right.
Now, I think that may be because that woman and perhaps other women are not ready to go forward, and you can understand them not wanting to have their lives blown up. But at the same time, it just fuels. I mean, this is sort of the beginning of the story. There's a lot more to know about this and the way that networks now respond to these kinds of allegations and who knew what when.
This is the revenge of Ann Curry, someone wrote today. Ann Curry. That's
unceremoniously
yes,
booted
exactly.
from the Today
I didn't hear
Show.
from Deborah Norville, other people we wanted to talk to. I'd like to hear from all of them. I appreciate it, Howie. Thanks so much.
Good to see you.
And sex assault accusations are serious, but can the current climate go too far? And when is just an allegation just enough to try to take a public figure down? My old boss, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, knows a thing or two about that, and so does my former presidential candidate, I should say, Herman Cain, speaking publicly for the first time in this current climate about the accusations that derailed his bid for the White House in 2012. Herman, it's great to see you. First of all, welcome back to the network. This has been a wild time. A lot of icons in the media world, one after the other, taken down. A producer from State of the Union on CNN, it was unceremoniously fired today for inappropriate conduct. No sexual attack or anything, but inappropriate conduct, and the list goes on and on. What are your feelings about this, given the accusations against you in 2012?
Well, first, Laura, congratulations on your new show.
Thank you.
The Ingraham Angle. And now you're going to get the Cain critique on the subject that you raised. First of all, you can't look at all of these as the same because they are not. Some of them have evidence, including pictures, that it actually happened. Some of them were based upon accusations, speculation, but no confirmation. Now, I can't talk about all these situations, but I can talk about my situation. There were a lot of accusations, and there was a lot of speculation to try to derail my campaign, but no confirmation. And the reason was the liberal media didn't want to know the truth. They did not want to know what the facts were about the people that were accusing me. Now, what's different about my situation, and let's just say Roy Moore's situation, is that they came after me with repeatedly attacks and accusations, but no confirmation. They now believe that if they throw more and more and more mud on the wall, that eventually people are going to believe it. But that has backfired, because as you know, the latest poll shows Roy Moore is now back in the lead in Alabama, and the people in Alabama are going to have to decide.
Herman, you decided to bow out in 2012. You had a really, strong and vibrant following, and
yes.
A lot of people just liked your presence in the race. But when these things started ping, 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 one after the other coming out, you just decided, for my family's sake, I'm not going to continue. Do you regret that now, looking back? Do you wish you had stayed in and fought it out?
No, I do not. Because as you pointed out, they came week 1, week 2, week 3. And what we concluded was that it was going to continue 4, 5, and 6, the way it did with the Judge Roy Moore. I bowed out primarily not because I couldn't take the harassment, I couldn't take the firestorm, but because my family, grandchildren especially, started to hear jokes about their papa on the music stations, and I did not want that to continue. If I had stayed in the race, it was only going to get worse and worse and worse. Why? Because the liberal media that wanted to develop a firestorm to stop somebody, they were not going to stop. And I didn't want to continue to put my family members at all levels in that position.
I want to share something with you that happened today, apparently, at this Democratic caucus meeting. And this was involving the John Conyers situation. There's a push probably looks like to boot him out of Congress, encourage him to resign. James Clyburn has compared John Conyers' accusers to the child murderer Susan Smith, who initially claimed a black man had abducted her kids. And Clyburn said that these are all white women who've made these charges against Conyers. What do you make of that outrageous claim?
Laura,
who cares what color the skin is of an accuser?
Color has nothing to do with it. They are trying to deflect the subject and to deflect the accusations. John Conyers is one of those situations where there is absolute proof that he did some of the things that he did. I mean, you take Senator Al Franken, you have a picture. It shows that he did some of the things that he was accused of. Now, you've got other situations where it's all accusations, speculation with no confirmation. We got confirmation with Representative Conyers. We got confirmation with Al Franken, and we got confirmation with Charlie Rose. Those have confirmation, and they have even admitted it. But you got a lot of others out there that are based on accusations and speculation, but no confirmation.
What about this slush fund, Herman, in the House of Representatives, where you're paying out $17 million? Some of them are not sexually related, but apparently none of these congressmen knew about it. And no one, as far as I know, that I've interviewed in the House, is demanding that the names be released of who was accused of what. Do you think that's important?
Yes, it's important. And I believe that now that it has come to light that Representative Conyers used that slush fund for some of the things that he wanted to cover up, yes, the American people and the voters and the taxpayers deserve an explanation. We didn't even know that this slush fund existed.
No. Herman, none of these guys knew. It's a total scandal. And what else do they not know? That's my question. It's great to see you back.
Good.
Thanks so much for joining us. And up next, our exclusive with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell trying to push that tax reform bill through the Senate and weighs in. You won't believe what he says about the Alabama Senate race and sex abuse allegations on Capitol Hill. All coming up. So you think it's a possibility he could be expelled from the Senate? It is said that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has one of the toughest jobs in politics. Why? Well, he's taken fire from both the left and the populist right, sometimes including yours truly, on a daily basis. Earlier this evening, believe it or not, I sat down with him, and he was nice enough to give an exclusive interview to the Ingraham Angle, where he addresses a range of topics: the wave of sex harassment revelations rocking Capitol Hill, the Alabama Senate race, and a lot more. But we began with the GOP's do-or-die tax reform push. Senator McConnell, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
I'm glad to be with you.
So you just left the Senate floor. The battle is underway for tax reform. How's it looking?
Unanimous Republican vote to go forward with the tax bill. Hope it'll be unanimous at the end, but we all agreed to get started after a lot of negotiations. I'm optimistic we're going to deliver a comprehensive tax reform to the American people for the first time in 31 years.
Now, Marco Rubio and Mike Lee, kind of at last-minute move, are pushing for a hike in the corporate tax cut from 20% to 22%, and they then want to give more relief to lower-income people with children. Where is that going to go, and what is that? Is that going to be a monkey wrench in your plan here?
We'll see. I mean, it's open for amendment. There will be plenty of amendments, both on the Republican side and the Democratic side. But what I think we have 100% agreement on, Laura, is that we want to do comprehensive tax reforms for the first time since the second Reagan administration. You know, the dials may twist a little bit as we go along, but the core is middle-class tax relief and making our businesses more competitive against other businesses around the world, and to keep our jobs here in this country.
So Donald Trump originally wanted 15%, went up to 20%, and you're saying tonight it could go up to 22% after this is all over?
My preference is 20, but the Senate's going to work its will, and there are going to be plenty of amendments on both sides. But I think the core effort here, middle-class tax relief and keeping our jobs in the country, are going to be intact at the end.
Some of the headlines about what you're trying to do with tax reform, just a couple. GOP's ugly secret. Tax plan would force a $250 billion cut in Medicare. $1.4 trillion to the deficit is going to really hurt higher education and going to make it more expensive, college presidents say. Specifically on this $250 billion cut over time in Medicare, so it's going to force spending cuts on Medicare.
That's, of course, completely false.
How?
It's just not true. We're not touching Medicare at all in this bill. Not at all. And on the deficit question you raised, we'd only have to grow 0.4% over the next 10 years. 0.4% over the next 10 years to fill that $1 trillion gap that the critics keep saying is going to sit there, as if the economy wasn't going to respond to this incredible relief it's going to get from the burden of high taxation. Nonsense.
So you're not worried about the deficit? You think the growth spurred by these tax cuts?
This is not going to be a deficit producing effort.
Why didn't you guys go with a border adjustment tax that would have actually infused some more money into this process? You would have been able to get cleaner tax reform, cleaner tax cuts. Ryan was for it. Some people called it a value-added tax.
Yeah, there was a lot of resistance to that, a lot. And it was sort of aired out by the House last year when we were in the early discussions about this. I couldn't have passed it in the Senate. We have to deal with what can pass. I need 50 votes. We have 52 Republicans. We have all 52 who want to get to yes. But that was just not something I could sell in the Senate.
John McCain has been kind of a thorn in the side of the Trump administration. They've had, acrimonious relationship going back to the campaign. Right now, do you think he's the biggest obstacle to this getting to the ultimate 50-50?
Well, he voted to get on the bill. And I know John McCain well enough to know he's not going to cast a vote on tax reform over how he may feel about the current occupant of the White House.
You don't think that comes into play at all?
I don't think so, no.
Let's move on to some other issues, because there's a lot going on in the country right now on a whole bunch of fronts. The Alabama Senate race has taken up a lot of oxygen in the political landscape. He's up now in the polls 5%. You favored Luther Strange. A lot of money went into supporting Luther Strange. He didn't win. Roy Moore won. I actually supported Mo Brooks, but Roy Moore won. And now, of course, all these allegations against him. You said he should step aside. He may very well win this election. What does that say about your influence in the Senate, your influence? Does it have any implication for you? He wants to unseat you, he said.
Well, President Trump and I were on the same side. We both supported Luther Strange, even though you supported Mo Brooks. The people of Alabama decided to go in a different direction. And on December the 12th, they'll get to decide who they want to send to the Senate, and we'll deal with that when that happens.
So if that happens, there still are senators who say we could vote to expel him from the U.S. Senate. But what does that say to the state of Alabama? They've heard all the arguments. And I know you said you believe the women who came forward. I tend to think some of them are credible as well. But the people of Alabama are hearing it all.
They're going to make the decision in Alabama, and we'll
So
deal.
should you in the Senate then invalidate that by expelling him out with a 2/3 vote?
We'll deal with the aftermath of the decision the people of Alabama make on December 12th.
So you think it's a possibility he could be expelled from the Senate?
I think there's a possibility you'll have an ethics issue. And
An ethics investigation once he gets here?
Yeah, I think it's almost certain, yeah.
How far back will those allegations, they go back like almost 4 decades.
It'll be up to the committee.
Wow, there's a lot of ethics investigations going on.
That's true. Unfortunately.
Yeah, over in
the
the Senate doesn't have any sort of fund like the House has. One of those, they're calling it a shush fund or a slush fund to settle settlements, sexual.
Are you talking about harassment cases?
Yeah.
Well, we're taking a look at completely changing whatever the status quo is. I mean, we 2 weeks ago in the Senate passed a measure to require mandatory training. We've got a bipartisan group of Republican and Democratic women in the Senate giving us advice about the next step, and clearly the status quo is not acceptable.
Well, Kirsten Gillibrand, who has been on this issue and it affects the military, junior senator from New York, she came out and she said, well, Bill Clinton really should have been, basically resigned. I mean, it's a little, Kirsten come lately on Bill Clinton. I mean, he was accused of raping Juanita Broderick and Paula Jones, Kathleen Willey, the list goes on. But now Democrats are kind of deciding to kick the Clintons to the curb. Do you find that to be credible, political? What is it?
Well, without relitigating all that, the question is, what are we going to do now? And we've already passed a measure requiring mandatory training. Before the end of the year, there's high likelihood we're going to pass either another Senate rule or legislation to outline the best way to handle these kind of cases in the future. Under any circumstances, whatever is passed, any member of Congress ought to be personally liable for any case that he or she loses.
Are you in favor of unmasking the names of those in any type of settlement group over in the House?
Retroactively?
Well, there's a whole bunch of people whose names are unknown, even apparently to the congressman who is in charge of the committee that's supposedly overseeing.
Well, Laura, I think my attitude about that is I want to wait and see what the women of the Senate recommend on that and the other issues we're talking about.
So it could be possible that we'll never learn?
I'm going to wait and see what the women of the Senate recommend on that issue.
Why just the women of the Senate? I mean, doesn't everybody?
I think they're in a very good position to take the lead. Some men are involved as well on both sides.
Up next, part 2 of my talk with Leader McConnell, including his strong response to those in the media questioning President Trump's mental fitness for office and a possible government shutdown. And later, the media will not stop attacking Melania Trump. I'm going to respond in a continuing angle you don't want to miss. Welcome back. Questioning President Trump's mental fitness for office is becoming a vicious, relentless obsession of the left. So I asked Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell about that in part 2 of our exclusive interview tonight. 2 different cable networks today, MSNBC and CNN, at different points in the day, were raising serious questions. I mean, these are big league reporters about the mental state of President Trump. Implying, or not just coming out, implying, saying that he looks like he has early onset dementia. He's unstable, he's destructive, he's imbalanced at a time where we could very well be facing a war with North Korea. You've had a lot of interactions with the president. Tell us about what you view his intellectual, mental capacity.
Those accusations are absolutely outrageous. I mean, I speak to the president on a virtually daily basis, and I'm involved with him all the time on all these issues. And that kind of accusation is totally baseless and outrageous.
I mean, it's so personal, and as someone who, I mean, my father had dementia, and it's personal to me. And yet these charges are being thrown around, a lot of people believe, as a precursor to perhaps a Democrat takeover in 2018, and then ultimately a push to try to remove him from office. That feeling is in this building. The Democrats want to invalidate this election one way or another.
Look, I think those kind of accusations are completely off base and irresponsible. Let's argue over the issues. We have different points of view. For example, the decision to get on the tax bill was totally partisan. Every Democrat said, I don't want to do tax reform. Every Republican said, I do. That's the appropriate area for us to have our discussions in public about the future of the country.
Moving on to the government funding, government shutdown. Chuck Schumer has actually said as much that he'd be willing to move to have the government shut down. He wouldn't blame himself, but have the government shut down over amnesty for DACA, the Dreamers. And yet in 2013, he said this.
Don't hold the American people hostage simply because you're so sure you are right and everyone else is wrong.
Would this be political suicide for the Democrats to shut the government down over amnesty for illegal immigrants?
I think that'd be a pretty dumb place for them to end up, and I don't think in the end they will end up there.
The president has said he's open to a DACA deal. Tom Cotton, Senator Perdue have this idea of the RAISE Act, which would have a whole bunch of things in it, including ending chain migration, which is like a 70-30 issue. It's really not a political issue. You know, every Mexican who comes into the United States on average brings 6 family members. For every 2 green card holders or legal immigrants, they bring in 7. So most Americans are saying that's too much. Would you tonight commit to making that part of any future DACA amnesty?
Yeah, I agree with Cotton and Perdue. The president has given us till March to deal with the issue of DACA. And the question is whether you're just going to do that and nothing else. I'm in favor of doing something on the DACA front. These kids came here through no act of their own. I think they have a legitimate case to be made. But I don't think we ought to just do that. A chain migration, doing something about the diversity lottery. There are plenty of changes to the legal immigration system that should be added to any kind of a DACA fix that we do.
Do you think the election was a mandate on passing immigration policies that are geared more toward the American worker? Would you agree with that?
Well, I think clearly immigration, the president made that a front and center issue. I mean, the wall, which we're still trying to achieve for him, was only part of it. And I think there is a great interest in changing the legal immigration system. By the way, I'm sure you share my view that legal immigration is important. My wife, the Secretary of Transportation, came here at age 8, not speaking a word of English, and legal immigration has been an important part of America for over 200 years.
And assimilation.
Yeah, our entire existence. That doesn't mean you just let anybody in at any point, and it doesn't mean you tolerate illegal entries. So the president's actually given us an opportunity here by saying he wants to fix DACA, but he doesn't want it all by itself. He wants something with it, and I think the kinds of things you and I are discussing, that Cotton and Perdue are pushing, are exactly what ought to be part of a solution.
The tweets today from President Trump, one about the sexual harassment case at NBC, another he retweeted Muslim videos where there was violence in them, and apparently the source was someone a lot of people in Britain think is kind of an unsavory figure. Do these tweets make it more difficult for you to get stuff done here in Congress?
Yeah, I'm not going to critique the president's tweeting habits. There's been much discussion about that all year. It's his decision.
But Schumer and Pelosi didn't show up at the meeting, of course, yesterday. You had 2 empty chairs, which I actually kind of like the empty chairs, Senator. I think that was actually clarifying.
It certainly keeps things lively.
I'd be remiss in asking one other question. I'm sorry. North Korea. This is getting extremely tense, if it wasn't tense before. Would you urge the Senate and to be able to vote on a use of force, military force, if we're indeed getting involved in the Korean Peninsula again?
Well, if it gets to that, I think the president's doing actually a great job. He's the first president who's been able to get the attention of the Chinese, who are actually squeezing the North Koreans as we speak.
Are you hopeful we can avert war in the Korean Peninsula?
I am.
Senator, thank you for all this time.
Thank you,
It's
Laura.
terrific. Come back soon. And up next, another Senate bigwig. I'll ask Marco Rubio about where he stands on DACA amnesty and also why the Wall Street Journal today says he and Schumer could be working to kill the president's tax plan. He responds up next. And I have a message for those in the media who continue to pile on Melania Trump. You're not going to want to miss it, so stay tuned. There's a big tax reform fight happening right now in the Senate. And one issue that kind of popped up and is a little bit surprising is the issue of further increasing the child tax credit. And it's actually being championed by one senator in particular, Republican Marco Rubio, and he's found himself kind of crossways with the White House and some conservatives as a result. Senator Rubio, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Exciting times with the tax reform on the horizon. Finally, we're moving forward to a real debate. I talked to Mitch McConnell earlier tonight, and he thinks he's going to be able to get this done. He's very optimistic. Tonight, the Wall Street Journal has an editorial titled "The Rubio-Schumer Amendment. Florida Republican tries to blow up the Senate tax reform." What are you up to? You're going to blow up the Senate tax reform?
They're wrong about it. Let me tell you what it is. It's very simple. It's a child tax credit, and it's designed to help working people. Who are the people that would benefit from this? Firefighters, members of the armed services, teachers, construction workers, welders.
They get a child tax credit.
So what it is that a lot of people, because they make $40,000 a year, okay, they don't get to fully benefit from the child tax credit because they don't have a lot of income tax liability, but they pay payroll tax. They're the working people in this country that have been ignored and forgotten. They're the people that elected President Trump because they've been not just ignored but disrespected. And all this says is you're going to get to keep more of your own money. That's what the amendment does. They actually say it's a disincentive to work. That's ridiculous. You can't even get the tax credit if you're not working. So this is people making between $20,000 and $50,000 or $60,000 would benefit greatly. And by the way, if you look at the states that would benefit the most, I think it's 18 of the top 20 states voted for the president in the 2016 election. Why? Because working people raising children are the people that voted to elect the president with a very clear message that they sent us here to fight for them, not for the moneyed interests that control Washington.
So I think President Trump initially wanted 15, then it went to 20 as the corporate tax cut. But now, under your plan, it would go up to 22.
On the corporate side, a 22% corporate tax rate is 13 points lower than what it is now. Difference between 2022, it would still make us third among the G7 nations. It would still put us below the global average. There is no difference in growth between 20 and 22, especially when you factor in.
Numbers don't matter? You're saying
they do matter, but not in terms of growth. You're not going to see any less growth at 22 than you would at 20. It still puts us lower than the world. It's still ranked as third among the G7. And by the way, there's another way to pay for it. I'm open to
the $100 billion or so that would
about
cost?
$80 billion.
Yeah, they said $100 billion.
Well, here's why. Because we want to index it to inflation. But it's not our money. It's not the government's money. It's the working people's money. These are welders. These are police officers.
But they're getting a rebate for children, having children. What about people who don't have kids, who are not making money? What about them? Why don't they get a break?
But they also don't have the expense of raising children.
Right.
What we're saying here is you are raising children. If you make $50,000 a year and you're raising 3 kids, that money doesn't go nearly as far as if you're not.
Right, but they're not paying taxes either for the most part. They're not really, they don't have much of a tax liability.
Well, but that's what they're saying. Well, but they still get, they still qualify for all sorts of
other
things.
Will you blow up the deal on this? Will you be willing to blow the deal up if they don't go to 22%?
Well, I don't want to blow up a deal because if there is no tax reform, there is no vehicle by which we can fix this. And it already does go up to $2,000. I have never talked about conditioning anything. I am saying this makes our tax reform more pro-worker, which is where we need to be as a country.
Speaking of workers, you want to do a DACA deal before the end of the year.
It depends.
We would like to if possible. Do you think Donald Trump was elected to do a DACA amnesty before something like Obamacare repeal?
Well, I think it.
Do you think that's why people turned out to vote for him?
We tried to do Obamacare repeal. As you saw, it failed, unfortunately, because we couldn't get our conference together. Here's what I've said. There's a difference between DACA and the DREAM Act. If what they want to do, and the president's expressed an openness to this, is to do something like DACA, but constitutionally that's temporary and acts as a bridge towards something more permanent, that's one thing. If what they want is to make a permanent change to immigration policy, it must be accompanied by permanent changes to security.
McConnell said he's open to ending chain migration, E-Verify, mostly what Tom Cotton and Perdue was talking about tonight.
Yeah.
He said, I mean, chain migration is really the problem. Are you going to commit to chain migration, ending
Yeah,
chain
and we have in the
migration?
past. We've said that it should be limited to immediate family. We've always said it should be a merit-based system of immigration.
Yeah.
We've always said that we need border security, including a wall, and an entry-exit tracking system, E-Verify. These are all things we've long supported. The debate is, do you link it? The Democrats don't want to. Do you link it to anything else in immigration?
Trump's election result was a mandate to change this approach and really focus, as you said, on the American worker who's been hammered by lousy immigration policies.
Well, and again, that's why I support a merit-based immigration system, which, by the way, is also a reality in the 21st century.
Well,
our economy is fundamentally different than it was in 1950.
The Roy Moore issue is out there, obviously. He's up in the polls. He may very well win this race. What happens if he wins and he comes to Washington? The people of Alabama have made their own call. It's not our call. It's their call.
Right.
Are you in favor of an ethics investigation that could perhaps lead to 2/3 of the members expelling him from the Senate?
Well, first of all, there is an ethics investigation. That's the first thing. I don't even know how you initiate that.
Senator McConnell also was very open to that.
Well, assuming that happens, and people would obviously make their decisions based on the facts that emerge from it. I think what's complicating about it, and I've said this publicly before, to be frank, I find the accusations against him to be credible, and I don't think anything he has said or done in the last couple of weeks has helped him in that regard. That said, this information is before the voters of Alabama, and if they elect him, and then you, as a Senate, have ethics hearings to remove him from office or something like that, that gets more complicated. That's a little bit more difficult, and because voters will have this information before them when they vote for him, if in fact he's elected.
This issue of government shutdown. Chuck Schumer has said in the past, 2013, no government shutdown for policy. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Do you think he would actually shut the government down if he doesn't get his dreamer?
I don't know. I don't think it would be very popular. I don't think that you can. I don't think you can or should shut the government of the United States down over that issue. I just don't think you can or should. I think there will be a massive revolt, even perhaps within his own conference.
And finally, this House slush fund on the victims of, for a bunch of things, asbestos victims, settlements. Is there any fund like that in the Senate that you're aware of?
I don't know. I'm not aware of it. There probably is. We've never used it, obviously, but I think that should be made public.
So you're in favor, and you'll say tonight that these people should be unmasked. We should know who these people are in the House who settled, or the Senate if there's such a fund.
Absolutely.
And we should know who they are.
It's public money. It's not their money. One thing is if you settled with your own money, but if it's taxpayer money, taxpayers deserve to know.
It's great to have you on tonight.
It's good to be with you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Now, note, he said there probably is a similar fund in the Senate, another slush fund. Up next, new attacks from the Grinches on the left against Melania Trump and her Christmas kickoff at the White House, which is so beautiful. But guess what? I'm not letting them get away with that. Next. Melania Trump and the Grinches that want to steal Christmas. That's tonight's continuing angle. The geniuses at the Daily Beast have now joined the rest of the left-wing snipers trashing Melania's Christmas decorations. They're claiming that they give us insight into Melania's state of mind. Erin Gloria Ryan writes, Christmas at the White House will be both sad and hilarious, as most of Melania's demonstrative disdain for her job is. Melania's corridor of holiday sadness has given us a nice preview of what the world will look like post-nuclear holocaust. Well, you know what holiday sadness is? Attacking a woman of impeccable taste for decorating the White House with an eye for tradition and class. You know what the left hates? The left hates a traditional, godly celebration of Christmas. That's what Melania Trump is bringing back to the White House this year. All they can do is snipe and criticize. The double standard with Michelle and their continuing deification of her is obvious. Before we go, a great Christmas gift, of course, the new book, Billionaire at the Barricades, The Populist Revolution from Reagan to Trump. Learn about how Trump got into the White House in the first place. Didn't happen overnight. It was a long trail of populist fights that got him there. And that's all the time we have tonight. Shannon Bream takes things from here. Shannon?
Thank you so much, Laura. Here's what's coming up tonight.